Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are setting aside the digital stuff for a bit.
Yeah, we're going full analog.
Absolutely. We're digging into the tech docs, the history, everything surrounding really one of the most legendary guitar pedals ever, the BOSS DM2 analog delay.
And its modern evolution, the DM2W Waza Craft, which is quite something in itself.
It really is. So this is a deep dive into character, right?
Exactly. Our mission here is to unpack why that original DM2 sound became so iconic. You always hear those words: warm, dark, musical. We need to look at the technical quirks, maybe compromises that actually created that sound.
And then see how the new one, the DM2W, managed to, keep that vibe alive while fixing some of the old problems.
Right. Bringing it up to date without losing the magic.
The goal, like always, is to give you that expert shortcut, so you walk away really understanding the engineering behind the sound, not just the features list.
Okay, so let's start with the legend itself. The original DM2 came out in '81.
BOSS's first compact delay. And it pretty much set the bar for analog BBD delays right away.
It really did. And the reason is all about the tech inside. That sound profile everyone talks about, those warm, kind of rounded repeats.
Yeah.
That's down to how it works. The repeats naturally lose high frequencies. They sort of degrade organically. They get softer with each echo, but not just quieter.
Okay, that degradation thing. It's interesting because digital delays now give you perfect copies, crystal clear. So why do guitarists still get so misty-eye about this, like, soft, dark decay?
Well, that's the Bucket Brigade device, the BBD chip. We should probably explain that quickly for anyone who hasn't tinkered inside one of these.
Good idea.
So the BBD chip, think of it like a chain of tiny capacitors. They pass the electrical charge or guitar signal down the line one step at a time.
Like that old analogy, passing buckets of water down a line. And a little bit spills each time.
That's exactly it. And that spillage is the signal losing a tiny bit of fidelity, a bit of clarity at each step. And that loss shows up as that beautiful, dark softening, especially in the high end. It's technically a limitation, sure, but it's precisely why the repeats sit so well behind your main guitar sound. They don't clutter things up.
Right. They don't step on the dry signal.
That's the heart of its musicality, really.
And that sound, that characteristic, made it a big deal culturally. Almost instantly. The sources mention how versatile it was. It wasn't just for, spacey stuff. It was perfect for that classic rockabilly or blues slapback echo. But then you had players like Andy Summers, The Edge.
Oh, yeah. Using it for those huge layered textures. Stadium rock wouldn't sound the same.
John Frusciante, too, famously loves them.
When a technical limitation basically defines a sound for genres. Yeah. That's special. Now, if you're out there looking for one of these vintage ones, the 81 to 84 units, there's a really important difference inside them that affects the tone. Something collectors look for.
Right. This is about the actual BBD chips they used during that original run.
Exactly. The early pedals used an MN3005 chip, and critically, those pedals ran at 18 volts internally. That gave them more headroom.
Okay, so what does that mean in terms of sound?
People usually describe the MN3005 units as a bit smoother, maybe a little quieter, just cleaner because of that extra voltage.
But then BOSS switched right, to the MN3005 chip in the later ones. Was that deliberate, like let's change the sound, or just parts availability?
Most signs point to supply chain, yeah. Component availability probably drove the change. The MN3005 version, it's known for having a bit more grain, a slightly dirtier character overall.
Interesting.
So if you're a player comparing them, the MN3005 is maybe the creamier one, and the MN3205 gets a little grittier, especially if you push it.
So collecting these isn't just about age, it's about finding a specific sonic flavor, that subtle difference in grain. Oh, that's real analog nerd territory.
It is, and you had to work with it because the controls were so simple. Repeat rate, echo, intensity, that's it.
And repeat rate, that's the delay time.
Yeah.
And here's that famous limitation we talk about. 30 to 300 milliseconds, that's the max.
Yeah, 300 milliseconds, it's really short by modern standards. You barely get out of slapback territory.
We really are limited there.
Right, it forces you to be creative in a certain way. You can't just dial up endless long repeats. But what you could do, and what people loved, was crank that intensity knob.
That's the feedback control.
Exactly. Max that out, and you get that wild, infinite self-oscillation, the spaceship landing sound. That's a huge part of the DM2 mystique. It basically turns the pedal into its own instrument.
Okay, so great sound, iconic oscillation. But before we jump to the modern Waza version, we absolutely have to talk about the big practical headache for vintage owners.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget if you're not deep into pedals.
Oh, yeah. The power issue.
The power issue. Explain this, because it was a real pain.
It's the biggest operational hurdle with a vintage DM2. It needed the old BOSS ACA adapter standard, not the modern PSA standard that, pretty much everything else uses now.
And what happens if you mess that up? Why was it such a big deal for gigging players?
Well, the ACA standard was unregulated 12-volt power that the pedal internally regulated down. If you plugged an original DM2 into a modern standard 9-volt regulated power supply, like from a pedal board brick, the pedal basically gets starved for voltage. It sounds weak, choked, fizzy, or sometimes it just wouldn't work properly. It wouldn't have the right internal voltage for those BBDs to sound good.
So you were stuck using batteries, which die, or carrying this one specific old style adapter just for that pedal.
Exactly. A total pain on a modern pedal board.
Okay, so we have this iconic pedal. Beloved sound, slightly noisy, power-hungry, short delay time. Its flaws became its character.
Pretty much.
But those operational issues are exactly what the modern DM2W Wazacraft aimed to fix.
Right. The whole Wazacraft series, starting with the DM2W back in 2014, it's just a brilliant example of how to do a reissue, right? The philosophy wasn't just copy it, it was preserve that BBD warmth, the actual soul of the pedal, but bring it into the modern era with needed refinements and more flexibility. Give people the tone without the vintage logistical nightmare.
And the DM2W nails the big technical problems right off the bat. It's still all analog signal path, still uses BBDs.
Correct. Still the real deal analog delay line. But crucially, it uses the modern standard PSA adapter. Problem solved. Plug it into anything.
Huge relief for players, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. And it also has much better noise reduction circuitry, so that background hiss and clock noise you'd get, especially at longer delay times on the original, drastically reduced, cleaner operation.
Okay, so better power, less noise. But the real game changer, the reason the DM2W isn't just a nostalgia piece, is that dual mode system, right? The little switch on top.
That mode switch is pure genius. It effectively gives you two distinct top-tier analog delays in one box.
Let's break that down. First is standard mode.
Standard mode is the faithful recreation. They meticulously replicated the original 1981 DM2 circuit, so you get that dark, lush, organic thing. And yes, it keeps the original limitation. It tops out around 300 milliseconds.
So it is the vintage experience, if you want it.
Exactly. Pure vintage tone, but with modern reliability and power.
Okay. But then you flip that switch to custom mode.
And that's where the Waza engineers really earned their paychecks. The pedal completely opens up.
How so? What are the key changes in custom mode?
It basically transforms it from that specialized short delay into a much more versatile, almost ambient-capable machine. First, the delay time range gets a massive boost, all the way up to about 800 milliseconds max.
Wow. Okay, that's more than double. Takes you from slapback territory well into longer atmospheric repeats.
Definitely. And just as important, custom mode has higher headroom, and the repeats themselves are noticeably brighter and cleaner compared to standard mode.
Ah, interesting.
It still has that analog BBD warmth, that character, but it doesn't have the extreme high-frequency roll-off that the original circuit had, especially pushed past 300 meters.
That sounds like a really important difference for modern music production.
Yeah.
If you're building big ambient textures in a studio, maybe you want that analog feel, but you need more clarity and headroom so the repeats don't just turn to mush.
You absolutely nailed it. Custom mode lets you use the core analog BBD sound in ways the original DM2 just couldn't handle without getting really noisy or indistinct. It's the vintage warmth, but with like modern studio control.
And they didn't stop at the sound.
Yeah.
The connectivity got some major upgrades too, which is crucial for modern setups.
Totally. The DM2W adds an expression pedal input. That's huge.
What does that let you do?
Control the repeat rate, the delay time with your foot using an expression pedal. So you can do those cool pitch bending effects, manually sweeping the delay time for these soaring, almost synth-like sounds. Stuff you just can't do easily twisting knobs.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It also has dual outputs now.
Yep. Direct and effect outputs. So you can run a true stereo dry-wet setup, send your clean guitar sound to one amp, and just the delay repeats to another. Creates these huge, wide soundscapes. Or just makes it super easy to integrate into complex studio routing.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this whole evolution. Original DM2 defined that analog warmth, 300 meters range, greedy character, power headaches.
Yeah, the flawed legend.
And the DM2W. What's the final word on its significance?
The DM2W is just. It's the textbook example of how to do a modern reissue perfectly. It kept the essential analog BBV soul that players crave, but it fixed every single practical problem. The old power standard, the noise floor, the short delay time. It expanded the fidelity, the flexibility across that wider 20 to 800 millisecond range. It basically became an instant classic itself, a go-to for pros who need that reliable analog character on their boards.
It really gives the player a clear choice. Lean into the authentic, maybe slightly rougher standard mode, or use the expanded, cleaner custom mode, all powered conveniently.
Exactly right. The original DM2's magic was so tied up in its imperfections, that BBD high-frequency loss. The DM2W pulled off this brilliant trick, kept that exact character available in standard mode, but also engineered around those limitations for modern players in custom mode.
That wraps up this deep dive perfectly. But before we go, here's something to think about, a final thought for you. The original DM2, with its tight 300 meters limit, it really forced players to be concise, to be musical with those short echoes.
Constraint breeds creativity.
So now that the DM2W offers up to 800 milliseconds in custom mode, does having all that extra space maybe dilute the focus sometimes? Does it make it easier to be less musically intentional? Or does it simply free up that classic analog tone for totally new musical ideas? Something to chew on, how limitations sometimes shape the sounds we end up calling iconic.